Hi, I'm Chike Coleman, that's Sanford Hess, and this is Real Reviews Rewind, the show where we rewind the clock a little and talk about films that are a bit older. But this time we're taking you back in time a little bit and forward to the present a little bit. Or is time staying the same? We don't really know in terms of our two films. The first of which is Midsummer. It's by the director of Hereditary, and the second of which is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the ninth directorial feature from Quentin Tarantino. The first film I want to talk about is Midsommar because that's the movie that that just sticks in my brain so much. Midsommar revolves around a woman who has a terrible tragedy happen to her, and basically due to her emotional depression from what she sees as the event, she kind of invites her way onto her boyfriend's vacation to a retreat. And in that retreat, it's both beautiful and idyllic, but also you can definitely sense that something sinister is afoot. And throughout the film, we watch as these different rituals occur, and as the guests get more acquainted with their surroundings and learning that, there is no such thing as night in the area that they're in.
Well, they're in Sweden. I think that's relevant. Yeah. So it's up in the northern hemisphere.
Yeah. They're up in the northern hemisphere in Sweden, and they're enjoying themselves, but they're feeling very uneasy about little things that they're seeing here and there. And then once they're, for better lack of a term, indoctrined into the society, that's when you realize things start to go a bit wrong. And I'm going to tell you something from the very jump. This film is amazing. It's categorically beautifully shot.
Absolutely.
Wonderfully directed no matter what you're looking at, whether you're wanting to wince or be happy about the good things that you're seeing, although as the film moves on, those moments come fewer and further between. And I really loved that there's I won't call it a feminist agenda, but there's definitely a leaning for the woman to be the heroine here.
Well, it is a horror movie. I mean, that's kind of a tradition in horror movies for there to be a female protagonist who holds on till the end.
True, but that's basic. I'm going on a slightly deeper level here.
Okay.
You're rooting for her to triumph over the tragedy she's experienced. And you think that she's going to go there, but something completely different happens by the end. And that's what makes it such a wonderful film for me, because you're expecting it to fully go the whole horror movie trope, and for her to have a clear sense of self by the end of it, which, in a way, she does achieve that. But it's everything else that happens in between that makes it such a remarkable movie. I had many, many, many amazing moments with this film, most of them involving, the conversations between the boyfriend and his friends more than his interactions with his actual girlfriend, because we learned very early on he wants to break up with her. He wants to get out of the relationship, but because of the tragedy she suffered, he can't really do that. He doesn't see himself being able to do that. Sanford, what did you think of Midsommar?
I love this film too. I mean, this is a hard film to love because this is a very difficult film to watch.
Oh, very much so.
And the characters, some of them are not so sympathetic, although the lead character is very sympathetic, is a sympathetic character. I agree with you though that this, I have not seen Hereditary, but I'm going to go back and watch it. The quality of this movie is excellent. So, I mean, just as an example to me was the pacing of the film. The film starts off and we're introduced to these characters of the lead woman and then her boyfriend and his sort of circle of friends. Mm-hmm. And we learn a little bit about a backstory of problems that she has concern with her sister.
Yeah.
And the film starts off with this sort of mini saga of her and her sister and her parents and her concerns, and winds up in the culmination, which you referenced of, and some plot spoilers ahead here.
Yeah, go ahead and tell them.
Yeah, that her sister has committed suicide and killed her parents at the same time. Mm-hmm. So there's this, sort of quick start and run up into an exciting event, and then, the movie sort of slows down for a pace.
Yeah.
And we lead into this longer, slow burn where she decides, like you said, to go along with the trip to Sweden, which then slowly ratchets up pace by pace, the weirdness increases and what's going on increases, and it gets, as the movie goes along, it just starts to get stronger and stronger and stronger down that path, culminating though in this sort of very a little bit unresolved ending, or at least not traditional ending, which I appreciate so much. I love it when a movie just doesn't take the easy way out. This movie challenges you with the ending.
Oh, yeah. It does. I wouldn't call the ending unresolved, though.
Well, I mean, but it sort of ends, just in the way that the movie ends with showing her face as these events resolve. And I remember at the end of the film, I was like, oh, please, end here, this is amazing, end here. And then it went to the credits, and I was like, yes! That's the right place to end this movie, because it doesn't make a real judgment about
the character or the situation.
Right. It just says, this is what happened. Now, audience, I challenge you to decide for yourself what you think about that. I love that. I love a movie that puts it out there and challenges us to, to take away something from it.
I agree. My favorite character was not her. It was the boyfriend, because of how much I could see him struggling throughout to understand all the different cultural changes and differences, and really kind of testing himself as to, I'm in technically a relationship, but I've got both feet out the door right now. And to watch her acceptance of him, knowing that he has both feet out the door, and then okay, I'm just going to spoil this. There is a red-haired girl that the boyfriend clearly has some sort of romantic infatuation with. He doesn't really intend to do anything about it.
He's a guy.
He's a guy. He thinks about it a lot, but he doesn't intend to do anything about it. The elders see this and take that whole situation out of his hands to the point where he is actually fulfilling his desire. But it's completely... Oh, okay, I'm going to say it this way. It's like if he got roofied, essentially. He is roofied into an intimate situation which he finds himself in that he kind of does want to be in, but he doesn't want to be in that situation in that way. And the shock of this moment, not to mention all the grotesque things that happen in between, is amazing, because it's almost like the girlfriend, when she witnesses, is like, okay, these are your true colors. And that is the point where everything switches for me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, this is no longer a power dynamic game. This is a couple ripping themselves apart in the most intimate, voyeuristic way possible for the audience. And now I get to watch how she plays it out. Because along the way, she makes several discoveries about friends being dead, and the culture, and what their whole philosophy is in terms of making a new queen. And it freaks her out, but she doesn't want to run away from it. And you especially see that toward the end, and that's not really giving anything away, because how she handles the situation at the end, she just becomes the Beyonce of the movie, basically. She's like, no, I'm going to do this instead of that. And it's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, the gray areas of the character, like you said, I mean, the boyfriend wants out of the relationship, and these things happen, although it's not entirely his fault, but it kind of his fault. She makes these decisions. These are human beings acting somewhat like human beings in a movie, which, that's one of those things that sometimes they lose touch with in these movies. I don't do a lot of reading before we do these shows, but it had been a few weeks since I'd seen the movie, so I was reading a little bit of summary. So one thing I found fascinating was that the director, he had gotten the script, and the original version of the script was more of a slasher movie.
Yeah.
And he said that he had gone through a breakup, and he wound up sort of making a breakup movie that takes place in a horror genre.
Right.
And I love that, because that really comes through this movie there, and that becomes an emotional underpinning for the movie that helps ground it and give you interest in the characters all the way through.
The reason I love this movie is simple. It is a breakup movie, But in that, every character in their own way has their own form of agency, their own independence of one another. You can see initially that the lead female is clinging to the support she has, but as the movie progresses, she lets go of that and decides, okay, even though I'm learning these horrible things about the place we're in and I'm learning we really can't escape it, how can I make the best out of a bad situation? And she does exactly that.
That's right. I mean, I think it really gives her a chance to remake who she is. Although, again, that's kind of what the movie leaves at the end, sort of up in the air, is who is she? I mean, what kind of decisions does she make? And do you, as the audience, support the decision she made at the end? Or are you turned off, or, are you, at that decision?
Yeah. And I think the way I read it is that she's happy who she finds herself out to be.
And I think that's a very, especially based on sort of the last image of the film, that's a very reasonable and good conclusion out of this. But now, do you approve of who she is? And I'm not asking you for an answer. I'm just saying that's the challenge. This was a movie where I really wished we could have talked about it immediately afterwards. Like walking out of the theater. Because to me, it was a situation where I just want to unpack this movie.
You should have just dialed my phone. We could have talked about it. So yeah, I would rate this 4 out of 4 stars. Really excellently done. Wonderful movie.
Yeah. And go back to the excellently done. I mean, this movie, on a budget, I don't know how much it was made for. It wasn't made for that much.
No, it wasn't.
Is fabulously well made. The shots are meticulously planned.
It's not even the shots, it's the lighting.
Oh, the quality is so, and the acting is great, and the script is great, and the characters are believable, and it's got all that, plus all this out-and-out weirdness in terms of just being a completely out-there movie.
Yeah, Wicker Man, either version just basically got dethroned by Midsommar.
Ooh.
In my opinion.
Either version of Wicker Man.
Either version, yeah.
They're both tops on your list?
I mean, Midsommar just takes things to another level and does it well because of the pacing, like we said. So, in my mind, it tops those.
Well, tell me something you didn't like about this movie.
I'm going to sound prudish, but some of the violence I wasn't really that big of a fan of, which is contrary to how I feel about the film that's next on our list.
What a great segue.
So, yeah. What did you not like, though? What was your thing where you're like, I can't?
There wasn't too much that I really was turned off by. The one thing, the one thought I remember having during the movie was, you mentioned the violence, there's some gore.
Yeah.
And then there's some lingering shots of the gore.
Absolutely.
And I remember thinking while I'm watching this lingering shot of the gore, I was very aware that it was a sort of rubber model.
Oh.
And I remember thinking to myself, that probably would have been better if we had seen less of that. But what they did instead is the shot just kind of left this gore in the foreground, and then there's sort of an extended 5 or 10 seconds where there's a body laying there, and the shot is just showing that. And I just remember thinking, yeah, this movie actually would have been a little better with a little less of the showing that. It's like Jaws. Jaws is good because
you don't see the shark.
Yeah. And when you do see the shark, all you can think of is, oh, that shark looks fake.
Yeah.
And that's how the bodies look to me in this movie. So, that being said, that's about the only criticism I can make.
All right, speaking of bodies, there's a lot of wonderful bodies, Hollywood and non. In our next flick, Quentin Tarantino's 9th film in his planned 10-film...
He's stopping at 10?
He's stopping at 10. 10-film directing saga of films. And his 9th film is called Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. He wrote it, he directed it, stars Leonardo DiCaprio, Brad Pitt. We also have Luke Perry, we have Bruce Dern, we have Margot Robbie. That was the one I was looking for.
Kurt Russell.
Kurt Russell's also there. Who else am I missing? There's one other person that
he has the gang. He lists them as in the credits. So,
yeah,
it's a lot of his regular.
It's a lot of his regulars and a few new people.
Yeah.
So for me, the best way to describe this, because I'm horrible with actors, characters' names,
Okay.
is Leonardo DiCaprio is a slightly aging star in the realm of the 60s, and he is basically trying to find a way to become relevant again throughout the entire film. He has a stuntman that he's been best friends with for ages, but nobody really wants to work with him because the stuntman is accused of murdering his wife. And because of that, the two basically go on, and I'm going to say this with all the heft in the world, an odyssey of self-discovery from both ends. But they're doing it through the Hollywood guise, the Hollywood scene. When the movie starts, we learn that Sharon Tate and Roman Polanski live next door. And we learn that we're in the late 1960s when we know a very similar and tragic event is supposed to have happened. And we see Rick Dalton, I remembered one, and his...
Rick Dalton being Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yeah, being Leonardo DiCaprio's character, and the stunt double. Basically working through Hollywood to try and both get work and support each other until that's not possible anymore. And saying that isn't really a spoiler. I love this film. Mostly because it lets Leo be the one thing we really haven't seen him be since The Revenant, or even longer before that, Titanic, which is vulnerable. A person that's out of touch, that is aimless and has no real direction and is basically counting on his star power to sail him through life, or the rest of what he believes the life he has left. My favorite moment in the scene is him being, I don't want to say berated, but coached, let's say, by the child actor he's working with. That's my favorite moment in the entire movie. Just to watch him struggle to be both cared about and understood in that moment, because he's used to being in charge, and this child actor just completely takes over, and it's great. So I'm gonna just spoil something for our audience, because they know it's coming. This is basically the lead up to what we would say would be the Sharon Tate murder by the Manson family. And the stunt double does have a couple run-ins with them beforehand. And it's really not about that actual happening. It's more about what leads to that. And I think that is a very smart play. Instead of sensationalizing the event, which Tarantino smartly doesn't do till close to the end, he takes his time looking at each character's journey. And that's something that I really appreciate about Tarantino. He's learned something that I didn't think he had learned, which is restraint. Because Tarantino's not really known for restraint. You look at Kill Bill Volume 1, it's go, 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 go to the very end. You look at Kill Bill Volume 2, even though there's not as much action as Volume 1, there's still a lot of intent. And with this movie, the only intent is I have to be better than I was before. The rest of it's kind of not even that important, and that's what I love about this film. What did you think of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
I didn't know this was his second to last film.
Does that carry more weight, or does it not?
It does, because one of my criticisms about this film, although I will say I like the movie, but my criticism is that it was he now has a genre. So there is a Tarantino movie genre. Mm-hmm. And this movie sticks to that genre. It is a series of really well-written and often well-acted set-piece scenes. One of which, I'll just kind of go on a quick tangent.
Go for it.
My favorite scene occurred right after your favorite scene, which is when Leonardo DiCaprio plays an actor who is going through a difficult performance.
Yeah. That's great too. I forgot.
Yeah, you see him. And this is where there's three levels to this movie. You see him in between the takes, frustrated with himself or trying to get in character, and then you see this extended take where he delivers this amazing performance, and then within the movie, the director on the set yells cut, and then you see him after that performance, sort of exhale and be
like, I did it.
Yeah, be vulnerable, like you said. And I just, I was like, oh my God, what a performance by Leonardo DiCaprio. I just couldn't get over his ability to float in and out of levels of his character where you saw him inhabit that person and bring him to life, and then put that actor in a role and then step back out of that role as that. Wow. I mean, that's all I can say is, what a performance. Now, Brad Pitt, I did not really think delivered very much in this.
He didn't have to, though. That's my argument.
Yeah. But okay, go back to my Tarantino criticism. I thought about this afterwards, after I saw the movie and I was reflecting on it. There seems to be a trend in his recent movies of he wants to go back in time and right a wrong through violence. And so there's Inglourious Bastards, where you have these soldiers who go and, set fire to this Nazi theater and kill all these high-level Nazis, including Adolf Hitler.
Right.
Then you have Django Unchained, where...
Righting a wrong of slavery.
Righting the wrong of slavery. Hateful Eight, it was a little bit off on that. I mean, it didn't really quite have the same righting a wrong. It was just kind of stick a bunch of characters in a room and have violence. But if you go back before that, like Kill Bill, like you mentioned, she's righting a wrong through violence.
Yeah.
So there's this revenge fantasy thing.
Even Reservoir Dogs.
Well, I hold up Reservoir Dogs as it's one of my favorites.
Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction, you get the same thing. You got people righting wrongs.
Yeah, but I mean, just righting a wrong is within the context of the script is one thing, but these are each trying to go back and achieve some kind of historical...
You're going for the historical angle.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. So, when, this one where it sort of culminates at the end with the Sharon Tate, Roman Polanski murders by the Manson family, to me, afterwards, I was kind of let down with where this movie wound up, because I felt like they were telling this really interesting story, and then at the end, you kind of come to this final set piece that just really, to me, I mean, I guess you're supposed to be satisfied because of the historical wrong that they're writing, but it just did not hit me in the same power as, say, the end of Inglourious Bastards, which I think was a much better ending and much, or even Django Unchained, where the film came to a better conclusion. This one came to an unsatisfying conclusion for me.
I had to really sit on how I felt about the ending as well, but for a completely different reason.
Why?
Because it was telegraphed and I didn't pay attention enough to notice.
Well, so here's one of my little, this was one of my irritants about this movie afterwards.
Go for it.
This movie, and a little bit of a plot spoiler here, so apologize. This movie plays with the facts, in the sense that instead of going to the correct house to commit the murders,
they go to the
wrong house. The movie never explains why that happened. And in fact, I kind of double-checked my facts on this, and I got to admit, when I was in high school, I read the Vincent Bugliosi book, Helter Skelter, about the Manson murders. So, I mean, these things are exhaustively researched. So Charles Manson targeted that house, and they even referenced this earlier in the movie, because he knew somebody who lived there before Roman Polanski.
Right.
So there is a scene where they he goes there and he asks, "Oh, hey, where's Terry? Oh, Terry's not here anymore." Okay, and then he tells them, "Okay, go to Terry's house." Well, they go to the wrong house, which the problem I had was there's a missing scene, I guess, that probably was cut, where for some reason or another they go into the wrong house, and it explains it, but nobody explained that.
Yeah.
All we saw in this movie is this sort of, there's a conflict that they have with Leonardo DiCaprio's character before the attack, but then they don't explain why they go to the wrong house. And that kind of irritated me, because, I don't know, I mean, all I ask in a movie is internal consistency. I will accept a lot, just explain to me why things happen.
I hear that.
So that kind of set me off a little bit on the ending. But I don't want, to me, this movie is not about the ending. which is weird because usually movies are about an ending. You sort of are looking for a conclusion. This movie was about the journey.
Yeah,
And,
absolutely.
And that's a Tarantino thing. I mean, the scenes, the long scenes, the great dialogue, lots of characters, awesome stuff. And while I'm raving about the parts I liked, the little inside jokes that he throws in there.
Yeah.
One of them was if there's a gun in the first act, it's better be used by the end of the movie.
Yeah.
So the gun's a flamethrower, but that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And then there was just some great inner scene cuts. The one that sticks out of my mind.
Yeah, I was going to say which one.
The one that sticks out of my mind is there's a scene where you sort of cut to a Western sort of style doors.
Yeah.
And instead of opening, the doors are slid off to display the fact that it's part of a set. And it sort of transitions into a scene.
Yeah, the little bits of fake outs were really nice.
Yeah. So and then the last little Tarantino thing that I love that he throws in there is every time he'll reference kind of somebody's background,
Yeah.
he'll cut to a very quick scene showing those events. And I felt like he did that more in this movie than he's done in other ones. And I love that. It's just a great little way of throwing a little scene in there.
It kind of reminds me of Kill Bill Volume 1. They did that with each of those characters, and so it felt at home to me more than anything else.
Yeah.
I like this film. My problems with it are I wanted more of Brad Pitt stuntman than I got, and the fact that he was the one to take down the Manson people didn't excite me as much as if, a random bystander had showed up along with him to do it. Like, I would have wanted a random bystander to be part of the casualty of the whole thing, as opposed to, Brad Pitt doing all the work, because it's what he's known for.
Do you know that ironically in the real events there was sort of a bystander who was kind of caught up and killed in the same events?
No, but see, that...
There you go.
My point's been made for me.
Yeah. I mean, they could have thrown that in.
I would have appreciated that more instead of DiCaprio's character being oblivious for a while because he was high.
No, he had... I thought
Was he high or was...
No, he had a...
Oh, headphones.
He had
wasn't
headphones
high.
on. Yeah.
Why did I think he was high? Probably because he
No,
looked...
Brad Pitt was high.
Oh, see, I
He had
switched it.
smoked the funny cigarette.
Okay, so Brad Pitt was high, and Leo had the headphones on, and he missed the whole thing.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Which,
Okay.
He missed the whole thing, Quentin Tarantino joke, with where John Travolta's in the bathroom for all the events
Oh,
in Pulp
yeah,
Fiction.
yeah.
That's another shot at Quentin Tarantino.
See, I didn't even think about that because it's been so long since I've seen Pulp Fiction.
Absolutely one of the best. All right, I think we're running out of time. What's your takeaway on where does this rank among his 9 films?
Okay, I'll put it to you this way. It's not going to be in the top 5. It's like number 7. Because for me, Django is always going to be number 1. I find DiCaprio's performance in that much more captivating. And, my God, if there's anything you can love about that film, it's the way Samuel L. Jackson plays the house slave. Because, man, that performance was out of bounds.
Absolutely.
So that's always going to be my number 1. Kill Bill Volume 2 will be my number 4, and Kill Bill Volume 1 will be my number 2.
And what's number 3?
Number 3, I'll be nice to give it to Inglourious Bastards. I like this film a lot. It's probably a 3 out of 4 for me. Because, as you said, there are mistakes that are made, things that aren't explained as well. But damn if everybody doesn't put on their best performance. Brad Pitt included, because there's been a while since there's been a good Brad Pitt movie.
That's true.
In the pantheon of things that he's done. The last good thing I can remember him being in is 12 Years a Slave, when he was kind of a innocent, well, not necessarily innocent, but a bystander for all that was going on. But I do like this movie. I think a lot of people are going to love it. It is currently his most successful film to date. I just hope his last film is really a Star Trek like he wants it to be.
Oh.
Any final thoughts?
3 out of 4, I'm with you.
All right. Well, we will see you again in a couple of weeks for another set of reviews. I'm Chike Coleman. That's Sanford. We will see you at the movies. Bye, guys.